Good morning. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Alisha and I are going to take you on a bit of a journey and an adventure on how our elephant fundraising campaign came to be. It literally happened 12 months ago, this August. And it really was a campaign in which we turned limitations into strength and massive challenges into opportunities. And of course, a peanut-sized amount of budget into a colossal success. Now, for those of you who don't know, Manata Safari Park is owned and operated by Zoo South Australia, a conservation charity that exists to connect people with nature and save species from extinction. Manata Safari Park is actually the largest safari experience outside of Africa. And to give you an idea of scale, it's so big that you can fit all major Australian zoos into Manata and you still have a little bit of land left over. Now, the campaign was really born from a pressing need. The need to give 3 elephants a better home to truly survive. There was 2 elephants in Perth and 1 in Auckland in New Zealand that needed to find a new home because elephants need a stable herd for socialization and to really have the best life they can possibly have. Especially for the single female elephants that are on either side, it was important to bring them together. And because we have the space, Manata Safari Park was asked if we could provide that home. Now, I'd like you to imagine coming to work and thinking, I know exactly what I've got planned out over the next, little while. I've got my budget set, my resources are allocated, I've got some staff that are going on leave, and then you get called into a meeting and get told, actually, we have the opportunity to bring those elephants to Manata Safari Park if you can raise $2.25 million in 3 months for us. Needless to say, we faced an enormous challenge. So not only did we work with very limited funds, working as a marketer in a conservation charity, we never have big budgets, but this campaign was completely unbudgeted. We also had a very limited time frame. We had about 4 to 6 weeks to prepare and 3 months to tell the other zoos whether or not we can make this happen and raise the money to build that habitat for the animals, because otherwise they would have had to make alternative arrangements for the animals. And we also had key staff on leave. So out of our normal team, half of them were somewhere in Europe living the best life that they could possibly do. And to top it all off, we also have a very limited digital infrastructure. Our website is about 10 years old at this stage, and sometimes it does feel like we're holding it together with sticky tape and Band-Aid. And of course, I'm a marketer. I'm not a fundraiser. Whilst we've done some great achievements, with smaller appeals and donation asks, and our team has done great, successes over the years with those, no one in our entire team had ever raised $2.25 million. So we realized we needed some help. We actually inquired with a couple of renowned fundraising agencies to see if they can help us run this. But due to the lack of time, and probably also because we had no feasibility or capability studies across our donor database, they all very politely declined. They did give us a little bit of advice, and I'll get through that in a second. So how did we do it? The approach can really be broken down into 4 key steps. Knowing your why, and that was probably the biggest advice we got from one of the fundraising agencies, actually understanding why you are trying to make this happen. Knowing your herd, so knowing your audience. Building your strategy, and building your tactics and selecting your channels. For us, the campaign was really more than just elephants themselves. Of course, we knew it would be the best welfare option for those 3 individuals, But as a conservation charity, conservation is at the heart of everything that we do. And realizing that 50% of Asian elephants have been lost and gone extinct in the last 3 generations, and that there's only about 52,000 elephants left in the wild, it was our duty to really, bring this campaign to life, and it really brought it back to the core of our organisation. Now, we also knew that people wanted to see elephants in SA. In our latest annual research, they were the most sought after animal for Manado Safari Park, and I think what astounded me the most was the huge amount of anecdotal feedback we received from people telling us about their childhood memories of Samoan, the last elephant that lived at Adelaide Zoo. Adelaide Zoo had just celebrated its 140th birthday a couple of months prior to the campaign, and it was astonishing to see how many people came up to staff and volunteers to tell them about their stories that they had with Samoan when they were little. So our why was Asian elephants deserve to be saved from extinction. With 3 Asian elephants needing a new home in Australia, it was our duty to provide the best home for them at Manado Safari Park. Summarising all this up in one sentence was really important for our team. To be quite honest, we felt super lost at the start of that campaign. We were terrified and not quite sure how we would ever make so much money in such a short time. But having that sentence really helped us to not only be on the same path, but also go into the same direction across a range of departments, not just in the marketing sense. So after we had our why, the next step was to analyze our audience, our herd. We identified 4 key segments, which is our members. These are Zoos SA members that have bought an annual membership to visit Adelaide Zoo and Manado Safari Park. We have existing donors. These are people that have given to fundraising appeals in the past or have perhaps adopted an animal. We have the visitors to Manado Safari Park and Adelaide Zoo, and of course our followers across our social media. Once we knew who we needed to talk to, we really dug deep into the research and tried to understand, why do they care about elephants? What do they think of our brand? Why would they open their wallets? What is going to make them give to our campaign? But also, what was their previous content consumption behaviour? And luckily for us, we knew all that pretty quickly because we're doing a lot of research on an ongoing basis. So not only are we doing an annual consumer research, we're also doing a lot of post-campaign reporting. And I know that it can be super annoying, and it's sometimes the least favourite job when you've just finished a campaign and you've wrapped it all up, and then you have to crunch the numbers and write the campaign reports and all that. But if we hadn't had all of that information stored somewhere and at our fingertips, it would have made it a lot harder for us to move so quickly and to be able to put that campaign together so quickly. Manado Safari Park has a really good NPS of +62. We also have a really good brand perception that is aligned with the best animal welfare. So we position Manado Safari Park as the largest safari experience outside of Africa, which in our case really was helpful because even if people didn't understand all the ins and outs of elephants and herd formation and socialization and all those welfare considerations, they would still understand that they're going to a really big and beautiful place. We also know that our members' perception and behaviour changes the longer they are with us. So after about 3 years, our members change from just wanting cost savings from their membership to really wanting to support our conservation work. We recently found out that there's also a very high likelihood, of course, of members giving, but also of a younger general public audience aged between 18 and 34. And luckily for us, among our brands, people tend to give more to Monada Safari Park than Adelaide Zoo and Zoos SA. But we did know that we needed some help in looking what would be the best approach. So for those 4 audiences, we then went and had a look at the channels that they preferred. We realised that our email and direct mail would be a really good channel to start the campaign off with, even though direct mail in print might be a bit old school, but we knew we had people that have responded to that form of communication in the past, so we wouldn't want to miss out on that segment. We realised that social media was fantastic for engagement. Who doesn't love, cute animal videos and photos and all that? But it didn't necessarily translate into donations. We also only received very little donations on site. But the most important research that we looked at was also the previous giving amounts, which then formed the base of the ask. So if we knew people had previously given, $80, we wouldn't then send them a donation ask for $40, for example. So that knowledge was really valuable to have on hand. Now, I don't want to go into the debate between Byron Sharp and Margaretson on targeting versus mass media and all that. But knowing all this and knowing that we have engaged members and subscribers, we knew where we could pick them up and how we can target them to give, to the campaign and to become a supporter of the campaign. Looking at the numbers and the budget we had available, we also realised that our existing audience would be way too small to achieve that amount of money. So we had to go big. We really combined those 2 approaches. So we targeted wherever we could, and we went as big and as far and wide where possible. And given our social media was so low performing for donations, we realised we needed to look at some external support, and that's where Alisha and the team from Neon Treehouse came in and helped us to really amp our digital fundraising on socials. So the choice to partner with an agency was really to get their expertise and lean on their experience and expertise, but also have access to way more resources and really help us guide through the whole campaign from a strategic point of view, from an online fundraising point of view. And of course, Alisha and the team also took a huge chunk of work off our plates. And while I'm speaking of chunk of work, I'd also like to give a shout out to Cameron, who is in the audience here today. Cameron is my digital marketing coordinator, who, without him, this campaign would have looked very different. He literally built a landing page, fundraising landing page, in like a week and a half, it feels. So thank you, Cam. Now, without money, you need an incredible message, something to connect people with. And this is where we're now looking at building our strategy. So after we knew our why, which is elephants deserve to be saved from extinction, we then looked at our objective, our messaging, our call to action, and our campaign period. Our objective was pretty simple, though daunting: raise $2.25 million by the end of October. In terms of the messaging and call to action, we went with a very simple but clear message and call to action that not only showed people or told people exactly what to do, but also showed them what the outcome of their actions would be. So if they help us home elephants and donate, we can bring them to SA together. Now, I've included knowing your campaign period here because I think this is often an overlooked step when we're building a campaign. Clearly defining your campaign period and looking what else is happening in the, not only in your organisation, but also in the state or worldwide really helped us to amplify this campaign. For example, we realized there were footy games on during the campaign period, so we hit up Adelaide Oval to see if they would show our campaign graphics on the screen in the plaza as people are walking in and out. We also realized World Elephant Day happened to be in August, so there were some great alignments there that we could piggyback on, and I guess give our campaign a lot of credibility as well. So after we had defined our strategy, we looked at our channel selection. As a conservation charity and working with a small budget, every dollar counts. So we always knew our own channels would be a really important part of this campaign. So we heavily leaned on our email marketing and organic socials from an engagement point of view. It really was like a two-way engagement channel. But we also wanted to engage the visitors on site. So not only did we do posters, we also did those fun things. We invented all sorts of crazy things to bring the campaign to life. So from head in the hole stands to, as you can imagine, what these ones would be called in the middle, Elachinos, of course. So basically we partnered with our on-site cafe operators to turn every cappuccino sold in the campaign period into an Elachino, and they donated a dollar from every cappuccino towards the campaign. We also hit up some of our partners and invented casual days, and we named them Grey Days. And as you can see, some of our partners really got into it. Now, those things didn't really move the needle much on the budget as such, but they gave people a sense of ownership over the campaign and also knew that they could be part of the campaign and really amplified the campaign visually, on-site and physically. And I think the one thing they completely underestimated and how well it would perform is those little things, little badges. The amount of staff and volunteers that went absolutely nuts to get their hands on a badge was incredible. We had to reorder them twice during the campaign period. Now, of course, we knew we also had to invest some money, right? So, as I said earlier, we went and did a small direct mail print run. We booked some radio, sorry AIN, we went with SCA. We did some emails via third parties. These are your kids in Adelaide, but also using Showcase to tap into different audiences. And of course, we had the paid socials and the agency with Neon Treehouse. Our earned component of the campaign was also very important. Working across marketing and PR collaboratively and really consistently helped really elevate this campaign and bring it into spheres that we couldn't have dreamed of. So, of course, we did some print through PR and we did media releases and all that. But we also, looked for a partnership to get us on TV and to get us really onto a mass media outlet. So, armed with a little NDA, we approached Channel 7 to see if they would partner with us for this campaign. And in return for some, for a first scoop and some exclusive footage and some keeper interviews, they agreed to cover the entire campaign from start to finish. For us, that was super important because we knew as soon as we announced the campaign, every media station would be on it. Like, we were pretty confident that bringing elephants to SA would be something that gets picked up everywhere. But having such a small budget, we knew we couldn't sustain a presence on a mass medium throughout the entire campaign. So having that partnership with Seven, and they agreed to come on site and cover any milestone that we had mapped out, was absolutely invaluable. And through a lack of faith, we also ended up on national sunrise at the beginning and at the end of the campaign, which really proved to be the most valuable spots from this campaign. And I'm not going to take too much away from what Alisha is saying, but a pretty big donation resulted from that first national spot on sunrise. And as you can see, it didn't stop any of the other channels or news agencies from reporting on it either. And this is what it looked like. We opted for a pretty simple campaign visual, using images of the actual 3 elephants and showcasing them at Monada Safari Park and really showing people what it could look like. Now, as I've said before, we knew we had great engagement on social media, but we also know that people believe people and they don't necessarily believe brands. So in order to, I guess, bring that connection to people and knowing that fundraising is driven by emotion rather than by logic, we used our CE, Elaine, in our opening campaign video to explain to people the campaign and really bring that emotional connection to people. And we can have a quick look at a part of this opening video. Oh, no, we can't. Can we? Can we or not? Yes, no? No? Well, we can't. We will send it to you. It's good. It's amazing. Well, if you had seen the video, I also wanted to tell you that the video was super consistent with the rest of the campaign. You may know, working, with the CE, they always go off script, but we really made sure that Elaine would stay on script and use the campaign messaging that we had across everything else. So not only was the wording that she used the same as we would have used in an email, it was also consistent across our website and our media releases and all that. So that really helped to bring it all together and give it that sense of consistency. And speaking of consistency, before Alisha takes over and talks about the results, this is probably one last tip from me. Be consistent across your channels. No matter where you saw our campaign, if it was a poster, if it was a social post, if it was an email, if it was the video, it all looked and sounded the exact same. Of course, it was tailored to suit each channel, but you knew exactly where the campaign came from. And most importantly, it was also consistent with the Monada Safari Park brand. I often think campaigns can look really cool and they have the best key visuals, but sometimes it doesn't actually translate back to the core brand of the business and people don't know, who is even talking to me. So for us, it was very important to use the Monada Safari Park brand consistently as part of this campaign.
Thanks, Miriam. So now we've talked about the groundwork and the campaign, it's time to dive into the second half of the story, and personally the most exciting part for myself, the crowdfunding campaign. So as Miriam spoke about, she felt a little lost at the start, but I think what you've just seen that she outlined showed that they had a lot of good information to work with. So in terms of helping with the digital component, that's where we came in. So as an agency, we've worked with a number of startups and small businesses on crowdfunding campaigns, and this one was no different. So running a crowdfunding campaign, if anyone has done so before, it requires a slightly different approach. So these often involve startups or smaller companies, as I said, working with limited budgets, set timeframes, and needing to raise an amount of funds, usually a minimum and maximum. So in this case, it was Monada Safari Park, with a 4K ad spend, wanting to raise $2.4 million in 3 months. So no small feat, but we were ready and confident that we were up to the challenge. So a few key aspects of these campaigns is a cornerstone investor. So Monado managed to secure a cornerstone investor early on in the term of someone who wanted to fund match So we had a generous donor come on board to agree to fund match at particular timeframes of the campaign, which assured that there was donations early on, set the tone and encouraged other investors. So, as I said, these provide an initial boost and set the campaign up for fundraising success. But that's not the only thing that comes into play in a crowdfunding campaign. Branding also, all good. Just double checking it aligns with the slideshow there. So PR is something that we really recommend, and it's often a requirement of crowdfunding platforms. We recommend that you partner with a PR agency or have other ways to spread the message far and wide, which, as Miriam spoke about, is something that they garnered in the fact of unpaid media coverage with Channel 7, radio, print, and multiple other sources. So this works alongside the digital campaign to bolster the message. Branding also plays a major role in a crowdfunding campaign, and working with such an established brand such as Monado Zoo meant that they had a highly engaged social following, as they said, but didn't turn into donations. They knew their audience very well. We just had to figure out how to convert the existing interest. So, lead follow-ups are also extremely vital for a crowdfunding campaign. In a regular crowdfunding campaign, people would register their interest. In this case, people can donate directly from the campaign. We also know that with the other direct mail, email subscriptions, it was really important to follow up existing donors and their audience outside of the digital component, being that we knew that this wasn't the only way that people were going to donate. We also placed this really strong emphasis on this throughout the campaign, and I can just say that Miriam and Cam were massive collaborators between us, and in a crowdfunding campaign that's extremely typical to make sure that the client and agency collaboration happens and works very closely. Being that we've only worked together for a month, we were talking almost every day, I can say, and it is a true testament to show just how well that relationship worked and functioned into the campaign itself. So, highlighting all of this and knowing that Monado held a list of past donors and members, and a portion of donations came from offline sources, it further highlights the importance of all of the key points that I've just outlined, and it shows the Monado campaign was a fantastic example of how all these elements come together for success. So, looking more specifically into our ad campaign strategy, we focused on building audiences based on what we knew worked. So as Miriam highlighted, they knew their audience, they often knew where to find them, it just had trouble converting them into donations. So another reason why we came in with the crowdfunding campaign. We chose to reach them with a meta campaign, which is typical for our crowdfunding efforts, as we know that we can build specific audiences for the campaign and have the ability to track conversions through these. Apologies, the double-sided notes, it just shows how I work in digital, not print. So we began the campaign with one creative, which is the video that we were going to see before, and I know that that can sound a little bit daunting to marketers in the room using the same creative for prospecting and retargeting audiences. We were aware that this could cause creative fatigue, but with the audience sets that we created, we then tailored the message to personalise to each audience set, and clearly it proved to work. So, for the audiences, we broke this down into 4 key elements. We had a charity and not-for-profit, a conservation and sustainability, animal lovers, obviously, and then a retargeting audience, which also included a custom list of all the previous donors, subscribers, and the information that Monado had on their audience. So, another part of our strategy was daily checks and regular optimizations. As we said, that plays into a huge part of the collaboration between the agency and the client. This is regular for a crowdfunding campaign, given the short time frames, limited budgets, as I've outlined, and we have no time to wait for learning phase. The wait and see approach is something that we don't really take in crowdfunding. We often make optimizations based on cost per lead, audience. We turn off things very regularly, change up creative, but in this case, we didn't need to. So, we've laid the foundation for the campaign, we've built the strategy, and almost as quick as it started, it was over. So we began the digital campaign on August 7th, and then not 3 weeks later, I received an email from Miriam saying we had received a $1 million donation to the campaign, which is absolutely amazing. And not 24 hours later, the ads were off because we had reached the goal and absolutely blown the campaign expectations out of the water, which was absolutely amazing. So, cutting the campaign short by 2 months was obviously unexpected, but if we look to the results of the digital component, I'd just like to highlight exactly how this worked in the scheme of the entire campaign. So, we generated 607 donations of the campaign. We had a very high click-through rate, with the industry benchmark sitting around 1%, and as you can see, we reached over 6%, showing a very highly engaged audience, which also converted. And we had an amazing cost per click rate of 12 cents, which is personally very exciting to myself. The industry benchmark sitting around $1.70, so it just highlights just how outstanding the campaign results were in such a short period of time. So we also had a $5.71 cost per donation. This is something that we watch very closely in crowdfunding campaigns and tend to find that we sit higher than we'd like when we begin, and it generally bolsters off to lower to make sure that we know that we're going to hit the donation target. But from the get-go, we saw a cost per donation of under $5 from the first week, which was incredible, which will hear me say a lot about this campaign. So, from our 4 audience that we set up, we received similar donation numbers across all 4, meaning that we didn't need to turn off any of the audience sets we set up within the 3 to 4 weeks of the campaign, and that we knew we were hitting the right people and we were converting them. So turning that high social engagement on organics into donations, which is exactly what Monado highlighted as one of their issues to begin with. So when we look at the campaign as a whole, from start to finish, in terms of donations, you can see we had the expected peak of higher levels of donations at the very start when the messaging is fresh, everyone's seeing it for the first time, everyone loves pictures of cute elephants, as Miriam said. And then we can see donations held fairly steady throughout the campaign, seeing some smaller peaks during PR activity, such as the Salo Festival, the 2 fun matching weekends, and the announcement of the Run Wild at Monado Zoo. So, notably, the Channel 7 sunrise spot towards the beginning and end of the campaign drove donor numbers up. I haven't mentioned that on here because you can note where I've said the $1 million donation. I thought that was more important to highlight than I could speak about the sunrise, and also you can see the graph doesn't go up to $1 million. I didn't think I'd have enough slide space. So, when we analyse how the donors occurred, we had 66% of donations come through online sources, and they occurred through the 2 fun matching weekends. Sorry, came through the 2 fun matching weekends, 60% of donations, just to make that clear. So the other part came through during regular times on online. So we saw major donation peaks aligning with the PR activity, but overall numbers of donations held steady as I spoke. So Monado saw large offline donations as well at the beginning and end of the campaign, including the $1 million, because a lot of people probably wouldn't click through to an ad and donate $1 million online. But having explored the timing and patterns of these donations, you can really see the impact of PR working alongside the digital component and the marketing efforts and notable offline contributions throughout. So let's delve deeper into the specifics of donor behaviour. I'll break down the donation amounts, preferred channels and demographics next. But before I do that, I just want to turn focus briefly back to the overall campaign results, because I just want to highlight the fantastic results of the social listening. So, showing just how the campaign was perceived and its success didn't just come down to the number of donations. We also had fantastic engagement across both the digital and organic space, with high comments, likes and shares spreading the message further than our audience sets. And across organic and digital, we can see that 98% of comments were either positive or neutral, showing that there was high positivity towards the messaging and minimal negative feedback. So, going back to the donation numbers in the campaign overall, we can see that 70% of these donations were made for a suggested amount, and I've included an image there of the suggested amounts available on the website. You can note that some of these are quite uncommon amounts and not set at, for example, a 50 or a 60. It comes back to Miriam's experience and talking about knowing what people have previously donated and knowing your audience. So, also, it's important to note that 335 or 8% of these donations were made from a personalised URL suggested amount, which shows the effectiveness of personalised outreach with email marketing and knowing your audience. As Miriam spoke about, suggesting an amount to a donator definitely showed success. So, when we look at the average online donation amount, it was sitting at around $120, and the median, $50, showing that the major donations came from generally offline sources, but very strongly attributed to the ads as well. So when we look at the donor breakdown of the overall campaign, you can see that we had a majority of people come through who were actually new donors and non-members, showing that we reached interested parties who may have been quiet social followers for a long period of time, and we've converted them. Through brand reach on the PR, the digital component, these all played a fantastic role in bolstering up the community of Monado Zoo and building up their audience even further than they had before. You can see the other percentage of donations also came from members, past donors, and members and past donors together. So taking the audience set that Monado Zoo were afraid were too small to build up to the fundraising goal that they wanted to achieve of 2.25 million, by incorporating PR, digital components, you can see that now they're resulted in a huge past donation audience and surely a learning that they'll take into all future campaigns. So, regardless of the $1 million donation, I'd just like to highlight that we had a plan to reach the goal regardless. It was a once-in-a-lifetime campaign running for only 3 weeks and reaching such a massive donation amount. But I just wanted to highlight that between Monado and ourselves, we had plans in place for the digital component and the campaign in general to make sure that we reach this amount regardless, as I said. So previous to the $1 million donation, we were sitting around 700,000, which is a great place to sit at around 27 days into the campaign. So the steps to reach this, regardless of, were having the conversation around budget increase. Obviously working with a not-for-profit, this is something that we wouldn't have had to implement unless we really felt necessary, and luckily we didn't need to. But we also had plans to bring in other creative types and include extra audience sets if necessary. We also had continuous monitoring throughout the campaign, which I spoke about before, and this would incorporate the projections of dip in donations after the initial surge, which we would monitor to keep the campaign on track. I can't speak to what it would have looked like if we had to run the campaign for 3 months, but I just wanted to highlight the importance of planning forward, that we never obviously planned for the $1 million donation. It was just the most amazing surprise, but knowing exactly how we were going to reach this regardless is something that was important from the get-go and was always at top of mind from the very beginning. So, when we look at the campaign as an overall, these numbers are fairly impressive to myself. So, the campaign successfully attracted significant attention and contributions, obviously, raising a substantial amount within a short period. As I said, 28 days to raise the $2.25 million. When you look at the spend in total, and yes, this incorporates ad spend, printing of badges, posters, the Elichinos you saw before, and everything that was paid for in this campaign, and that sits at just over $28,000. Which, when you look at the return on ad spend, I did have to recalculate this a few times, thinking that it wasn't real, but we sit at over 7,000%, which is honestly insanity. And an ROI of 85 to 1, so $85 return for every $1 spent. So this set a benchmark for crowdfunding and fundraising campaigns, not only for our agency, but I'm sure for Monado Zoo. Being a not-for-profit, having small budgets, and what felt like lost and limited resources at the beginning showed to turn into one of the most lucrative campaigns for not only our agency, but Monado as a whole. So, to talk about the wins of the campaign before I hand over to Miriam, there were several. So, the $2.7 million in unpaid media coverage, showing the importance of brand partnerships and relationship building, reaching the goal within 2 months ahead of schedule, connecting donors with the emotional core of the campaign. We communicated clear and obvious why, and then converted people, as we said, that may have been slow or quiet social followers. Partnerships with other organisations, such as with our agency, Adelaide Oval, Channel 7, SCA, they showed that to share resources and gain reach, which may have not been possible before. And most importantly, the biggest win of all, in my personal opinion, is it put SA and Monado Zoo on the map for national animal conservation. So before I hand over to Miriam to talk a little bit more about the learnings, I would just like to make a comment that as much as I can talk about how exciting this campaign, it is actually the largest crowdfunding campaign our agency has been a part of to date, with the highest number of funds raised, and personally, a career highlight. So on that note, I'd like to hand back to Miriam to cover the rest.
Nearly at the end. Now, just some quick learnings from us. So, of course, the Channel 7 partnership was amazing to have, and we're very thankful to Chris and the whole Channel 7 team for supporting us. Rosanna has visited all the elephants since, and she's absolutely in love, so we are looking forward to continuing that relationship with 7. Also, I think the learnings we got from this campaign was, think outside the box and be creative, have some fun, but at the same time, be compelling and consistent to engage your audience. And I think from a technical side, the learning that we will continue to use in fundraising campaigns is offering non-standard amounts to increase the average donations. I guess don't be scared to go high, because you will always give people another option if they don't want to donate what you're suggesting. But it took a bit of convincing in our fundraising team to not write $8 down there, because we would have never reached our target if we had given such a low option on the website. Now, what does the future look like? So today we've reached $2.4 million, so even though we reached our goal of 2.25, we are still receiving donations. And overall, so far we had 4,776 people donate to this campaign, which I find incredible to see. Mainly the South Australian community get behind this campaign. It's just amazing. On the elephant side, the habitat construction at Monado Safari Park has started and is actually in full swing. Burma, the first elephant from Auckland, is set to arrive in just a few months. And Perma and Putramas, the elephants from Perth, are joining her in mid-2025. Now, since we made target and we have the capacity to house the elephants, Taronga Zoo have also asked us if we would be willing to take 2 of their elephants as well. So by mid-next year, you'll see 5 Asian elephants at Monado Safari Park, which is so exciting for us. I am assuming that video doesn't play either, but this is the director of Monado Safari Park, and he would have told you that he's immensely grateful for everyone's support, and unfortunately you're missing out on the cutest elephant trumpet sound that you would ever see. Sorry about that. Yeah, time for Q&A.
Epic.
I heard a rumour that you guys actually only met personally, face-to-face yesterday. Is that true?
Yesterday, yes. Yeah.
Amazing what can be achieved
We
these
did
days.
not have time to meet in that campaign period.
going to say, like, you have to work so fast that, haven't barely got time for a Meet or a Teams or a Zoom, you know. We actually had some really good questions come through.
Oh, God. Hope
So
it's not me.
you'll be fine. Relax, breathe. Didn't they do a great job? Round of applause. Absolutely incredible. So we have some questions about the Cornerstone investor. Kim Reddy asks, how was that Cornerstone investor identified, and what did the conversation look like?
So at the beginning of the campaign, we basically approached some of our major donors from the past to see if they wanted, to support this campaign. To have their support in our back pocket was really important, because that allowed us to launch the campaign and then follow straight onto a fund matching weekend on the first weekend after the campaign. Knowing you have, can't remember exactly how much it was, but maybe like $50,000 already in the bank before you even kick off gives your team also a lot of confidence, and it was great for us to have that money to play with from a strategic point of view and see how can we make the most out of that rather than just adding the 50 straight there. And the fund matching worked really well on that weekend.
Obviously, a lot of people want to know who this Cornerstone investor is, but we're not going to push you on that, because it's obviously, they don't want to be known. But ignoring that Cornerstone investor, what percentage of your donations came from interstate versus SA, and how does that correlate to where you were focusing the campaign?
So most of the donations came from SA. I can't remember top of my head the exact percentage, but we also had a donation from Germany, and it was not my family because I'm from Germany. The majority of donations came from SA and also New Zealand, because obviously the other, WA, because the other zoos, of course, promoted the fundraising campaign as well.
Here's a good one. If you had to run this campaign again, with the same limitations, is there anything you'd do differently to prepare?
Order more chocolate.
Order more badges.
Yeah.
I don't have a lapel mic, that's why I'm here. Have more time, probably. No, I feel like going back, there's probably a few things retrospectively that we would have done, like having more creative to implement in the space. Like I said, that would have been a plan to move forward anyway, but given that that wasn't the case, hindsight's 2020. That's really the thing that I would probably say to be different at the start.
$2.7 million in unpaid media coverage is absolutely amazing, and obviously would have paid to house the elephants. I know in my job I struggle to justify outcomes from unpaid media coverage. In terms of real money brought in for the fundraising versus your time and effort, how valuable was that compared to the other marketing channels?
The relationship with Channel 7, you can't put it in words how invaluable it was, really. For us to know that we had guaranteed coverage throughout the entire campaign on a mass medium, that was, it gave us the confidence that we could, reach a bigger audience that we needed to reach. So I think even just like mentally for our team to know that there's someone outside of our organisation that believes in us making this happen was really invaluable.
And do you think a lot of that came about because of relationships you built with the reporters and the teams there, or was it purely because of the subject matter?
No, that's right. And I think credit to our PR team, who have amazing relationships with all of the stations. It was really, building those relationships before you actually need them. That's probably the biggest takeaway, because then you can, you have that foundation to build on, and you're not just coming completely blind, and you have that relationship beforehand.
This question comes from Kat. Did you see an increase in memberships to Zoos South Australia during or after this campaign?
No, not yet. We have done a few membership campaigns anyway, but I think I'm hoping that all these non-members, we will convert them to members as soon as those elephants are coming.
Is anyone a zoo member?
Yay!
Looks like you've got a room here that you could convert.
Yes, we love you all.
A captive audience.
I've got sign-up forms in my bag, so see me later.